We're about to get into one of the most haunting and honestly bizarre psychological cases you'll ever hear. This is the story of June and Jennifer Gibbons, who the world came to know as the Silent Twins. And that one sentence, that's the key to this whole thing. It's a chilling pact that would connect two lives so tightly and end one of them in a way that still baffles people today. So imagine this. It's March 1993. After spending 11 years locked away in Broadmoor, a notorious high-security hospital, the twins are finally being released. They are literally on a bus, on their way to a new, more open clinic. They are this close to freedom. But then, right there on the journey, Jennifer just collapses. She dies. And her sister's June's reaction? It's not grief, it's not shock, it's relief. She later said, "I'm free at last." So this is the puzzle we've got to solve, right? How does a perfectly healthy 29-year-old just drop dead? The autopsy found no poison, no signs of a struggle, and more than that, why would a twin, someone who shared this incredibly intense bond with her sister, be relieved by her death? To get any answers, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Yeah, to even begin to understand this pact, we have to understand the secret world they built for themselves. It's a story that starts with this deep, unbreakable silence. It's all about identity, codependency, and just total isolation. June and Jennifer were born in Wales back in 1963. Now, as the only Black kids in their community, they were bullied a lot. And this just drove them further and further into themselves. They stopped talking to anyone. Not their parents, not their teachers, no one. They became what are known as elective mutes. The only people they spoke to were each other. And this is what's so fascinating. To the outside world, they were like statues. Unresponsive, withdrawn, just silent. But in the privacy of their bedroom, they were living this incredibly rich, complicated, and, as we'll see, pretty violent inner life. It was like two completely different worlds. And, their world was intense. They had their own private language, a kind of super fast version of Bajan Creole that no one else could possibly understand. They were amazing writers, too, filling up diary after diary and even writing entire novels. But their bond had a really dark side. They were so connected that they mirrored each other's every move, but they also fought viciously. We're talking about trying to strangle each other with radio cords, pushing each other off bridges. They were each other's shadow, and neither one could escape. So what in the world was going on here, psychologically speaking? Well, their super unique condition actually has a name, and it really helps us understand their story. It's called folie à deux. It's French for, you guessed it, a madness of two. It's this really rare syndrome where a delusion, a shared belief, basically gets passed from one person to another until they're both living in the same psychosis. For many experts, this is the key to understanding the Gibbons twins. So how does something like this even happen? Well, you usually need a few key ingredients. First, you need extreme social isolation, which, yep, the twins definitely had. Then, you typically have one dominant person who creates the delusion and a more submissive person who accepts it. For June and Jennifer, though, it was a constant, vicious tug of war over who was dominant and who was submissive. You know, a world that intense, it can't stay secret forever. As they got into their late teens, all that frustration and creativity and isolation, it was bound to explode into the real world. They poured everything they had into their novels, hoping to become famous writers. But when the books didn't take off, they just snapped. They went on a 5-week crime spree, theft, vandalism, even arson, and this led to them getting arrested. At only 19 years old, they were sentenced indefinitely to Broadmoor, one of Britain's most infamous institutions, housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the country. 11 years. Just think about that. They went in as teenagers, and for over a decade, their already tiny, isolated world was shrunk down even further to the walls of a high-security hospital. This place would change everything. And it was inside Broadmoor that their madness for two led them to one final, terrifying idea. They became convinced that for one of them to ever be truly free, the other one had to go. They decided that their unbreakable bond, the very thing that made them who they were, was also their cage. One twin was always possessing the other, holding her back. They came to believe that the only way for the survivor to ever live a normal life was for the other one to die. Just before they were scheduled to be transferred out of Broadmoor, Jennifer calmly told the journalist who'd been covering their story, Marjorie Wallace, that she was the one who was going to be sacrificed. She looked at her and said, "I'm going to die. We've decided." It wasn't a premonition. It was an agreement, a pact. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that bus ride in March of 1993, only now we have all these other pieces of the puzzle. So what really happened to Jennifer? Well, you've got two very different stories. On one hand, you have the doctors. The official cause of death was acute myocarditis, a sudden inflammation of the heart. The autopsy found nothing suspicious at all. But on the other hand, you have the Pact. You have this chilling idea that Jennifer, through some unbelievable act of will, simply chose to die so her sister could live. And the craziest part? The Pact? It worked, just like they planned. The day after Jennifer died, June woke up and she just started talking. To doctors, to her family, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The silence was finally broken. Today, she lives a quiet life, completely on her own, totally free from the shadow of her twin. So that leaves us with this huge, haunting question. Was this just a tragic, one-in-a-million medical coincidence that happened to perfectly line up with their dark pact? Or was it something else? Did the power of their shared mind, their madness for two, become so strong that one of them could actually will herself to die, just to set the other one free? It's a mystery that honestly just sits right on the very edge of what we think is possible for the human mind.